Welcome back to Europe. The last time that we saw Europe, the Roman Empire was falling apart. It was being carved up by Germanic tribes, and that's where we begin. So Rome has fallen, and when that happens, Europe enters a period that we sometimes call the Middle Ages. It's sometimes pejoratively called the Dark Ages, and that, as you can see here, is the time period in Europe between the Roman Empire, which is seen by many historians as being, super great, and the Renaissance, which we're not going to get into in this class, but is also a time that, many historians usually see as super great. It's Leonardo da Vinci, and, it's great painting, and it's all sorts of good stuff. So, between Rome and the Renaissance, two time periods that everybody loves, we've got here what, again, are sometimes called the Dark Ages or the Middle Ages because it's between these two big things. That's this time period in Europe, roughly from like 500-ish to 1500-ish. So it's a it's a long time. It's like 1,000 years. And this is what Europe looks like at the outset of those 1,000 years. This is the politics of the era. You can see here the Roman Empire, which used to have all of this, has fallen apart. It's been shattered. It was divided up. And the Eastern Roman Empire survives. It's right here. The Western Roman Empire, though, has collapsed. It's been split up by the Germanic tribes who have now set up their own little petty kingdoms. So you've got the kingdom of the Ostrogoths have taken over the area of Italy. You've got the Vandals taking over North Africa here, the Visigoths over here. You can see where everybody's taken over. So Europe is highly fragmented, and it's nothing like it looks today. Most of these Germanic empires don't last for very long. The Ostrogoths, the Vandals, the Visigoths, they're important in that they took out Rome, but they're not important in that they set up some sort of long-lasting civilization in their own right. They're going to go away fairly quickly. The one empire that isn't going to go away that quick, and so we're going to spend just a minute on, is up here, the Frankish kingdoms up in, you can see here, modern-day France. This little group, these guys are going to last a little bit longer. They're going to be more important. And one of the big reasons for that is this gentleman right here, Charlemagne, king of the Franks. Charlemagne is the grandson of Charles the Hammer Martel, who's the gentleman who defeated the Islamic empires when they were coming up, when they'd already conquered Spain and they were coming up into France, and France sort of stopped their expansion into Europe. That was his granddaddy. His dad was Pepin the Short, and Charlemagne is just Charles the Great. Charlemagne's a very successful military leader. He's going to lead armies like you see pictured here to unite, modern-day France, parts of Italy, a couple other parts of Europe. He creates this little mini empire. And he rules for a long time and wisely. Here's his old throne. Here's the man himself. And you see here in this picture of him that, he has his sword, denoting that he was, again, this great military leader and this conqueror. But you also see, some religious images in the picture as well. And that's because the church is still around. As you'll recall, Christianity had become the official religion of the Roman Empire, and that doesn't go away when the Roman Empire collapses. The church still exists. The religion is still very strong in Europe, and Charlemagne, he becomes close allies with the Pope and the Church, and so he is, the beginning of this, long line of European rulers who is, again, a sort of a political ruler. And while he's not a religious leader, he's not the Pope. He does have the sort of church's blessing, and he promotes the church instead. So there is this sort of marriage of political power and religious power that exists, here at the start of medieval Europe, and again all throughout. And that gets me to a larger point that I want to make. I'll go up here, of just medieval culture in general becomes this sort of interesting mix of old Roman Empire practices, Germanic practices, one of which I'll discuss in a second, and church traditions, because the Christian church is still around, still strong. It's changing, but just like everything is, the Germanic tribes, the big bearded guys that took the Roman Empire out, their influence is strong in medieval practices that develop, and old Roman traditions, though, don't go away entirely. Some of those do stick around. So let's go into just a little bit of that, and then we'll be all done. So I'll start at the bottom, right here. The ordeal was a German tradition. It was a way of judging right and wrong. It was a way of adjudicating disputes, right? A way of judging things. And literally what they would do in the ordeals is they would put someone through a physical trial to determine whether or not they were guilty, with the thought being that, God would protect them if they were innocent. So, like, for instance, if they were judging whether someone was guilty, they would have them hold onto like an iron that had been heated up, that was like very hot, and they had to hold onto it for some number of seconds. And if they could hold onto it for that period of time, then they were innocent. But if they dropped it because it was too hot, then they would be guilty. And again, the thought was that they would be sort of, that they would be protected by up on high if they were innocent, but they wouldn't be protected if they were guilty. So that was a German tradition that then becomes a tradition that's sort of adopted in early medieval Europe. This is also the time period that sees the creation of monks and nuns. And if you don't know what monks and nuns are, they are a Christian tradition, monks for men, nuns for women, of people, devoting themselves to the religion and withdrawing from larger society. So, they interact with society in that they go on, missionary work, or they help people, they try and help the poor, but they withdraw into, living in, cloistered settings, right? They just live with one another, and in some cases don't even interact with the public at large. So that tradition begins at this time. Last but not least, the scriptoria was something that was started at this time. Again, by many monks would do this. These would be rooms in which monks who were devoted to learning would sit and copy by hand, because they didn't have sort of wood printing yet, books, right? So they would sit and they would copy the Bible. They would like generate another Bible by writing from one into another. So now there'd be another copy of the Bible in the world. But they would also do it with old Latin texts, with stuff from the old Roman Empire that were thought to be very important, philosophical works or whatever. So these would literally be rooms where they would produce books, but again, by hand. And this is something that good old Charlemagne was into, because that was another aspect of his reign, is he wanted to promote learning and promote knowledge in his empire. So this sort of starts us off on our journey into medieval Europe. We'll do some more tomorrow.